Adelaide, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Heather.
So we met, it feels like maybe a year-ish plus ago. I don't know how long ago that was when we originally met.
That feels about right.
And then we
Like
spent
even with the
last,
blur of time, I feel
I
that.
know, I know. So, like when you actually go back, it just the older you get, the quicker time passes.
Absolutely.
And I fell in love with you, your message, your mission, your product. And I wanted to interview you. And I selfishly wanted to interview you because we were at a little mastermind and you were just like a wizard of information and one of the coolest people I know. And I'm like, my people need you. So that's why you're here.
This is very fun because you are very cool and your people are very cool. So I just feel like now we're all together. Like this is perfect.
This is how we make friends in the modern world. Start a podcast so that you can record your conversations. Okay. So talk a little bit about TalkBox.mom, what you do, the product, and then we're going to reveal to everybody the real reason why I had you here because I just think you're a genius. Like you are definitely a visionary in this space. My community, I talk about being emotionally uncomfortable, but it's about like living and parenting outside of the box, no pun intended. Because typically I get a lot of like questions in my DMs about modern education, people wanting to homeschool, but not necessarily wanting to dive all in on homeschool, education just not working anymore, but parents just wanting to give their kids the skills and learn new things in this modern era. So talk about what you do.
Yeah, I want to say someone was talking to me. I don't know if it was at the same mastermind. I feel like it was. And they were just like, yes, it was. They were like, you just don't need people's approval. And I was like, why would I need that?
I love that.
So I'm definitely about having a vision for your family, what you want to do, and just doing it. Figuring out the strategy to like make it happen. If you're like, this isn't my way, okay, well, let's get it out of your way. So at TalkBox.mom, what we do is we help families to start using talking in another language the same exact day you start. You don't study for a couple years and then maybe kind of can read the language, but you're horrified, have anxiety to talk. We don't do that. You talk from day one.
I love that. Talk from day one. That feels like impossible. So when
It
I,
does feel it. What's that?
well, I was going to say my children are bilingual. They go to full French school. And what they do is they try to get the parents on board to learn the language. And so I had to take like a few French classes. I could not hold today. I would not be able to hold a French conversation with anybody, but my kids would. And part of the resistance for that is air quotes, don't have time to learn another language.
Oh yeah, I don't think any parent has time to learn a language the hardest way possible. So it's like very delusional to think, and I feel like free to say this on your podcast. Others I
Please
wouldn't
do.
say that, but
Yeah.
I'm like she tells her people how it is. So it is extremely delusional to think that if you learn to conjugate a verb, lots of verbs, you learn vocabulary words, that suddenly you will speak a language.
Mhm.
It's really delusional to think that if you play in an app on your phone, right, and you're playing in an app, that suddenly you will magically speak a language because you have never done the actual thing, speak the
Mhm.
language, right? So at TalkBox.mom, we don't copy professors. We don't copy these traditional ways of learning and thinking about it because we would rather copy the most successful language teachers in the world, and those are moms and dads. We teach babies and toddlers all over the world to talk at a native level before our kids ever go to grammar school. Grammar is not a requirement for speaking a language. It's not. There's a lot of people that speak English, they don't know what's going on. What do you think of that, Heather?
I love that. I agree. And people, when you can speak fluently and well, people think you are very intelligent.
Yes, and it's so what's going on is so we have people talk the same day you start, and you're like, I don't know if that could happen. Well, it just sounds coming out of your mouth. It can happen. It doesn't have to be good. It doesn't have to be amazing. You just have to do it because the only way to get better is to do it, right? So you just do the thing. You can sound terrible in it. We're very good at explaining to people that, like, we follow this thing called the adorable baby rule. And so, like, when a baby starts talking and they say, like, they're trying to say ball, they're like, bah, right? As a parent, we're not like, it's ball. You're saying it wrong, right? We would not say that to our baby. So we want to talk to ourselves and other people how you would talk to a baby. So when you go to say your first thing in a language, it's going to sound like an adorable baby, not like a bumbling idiot,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we just want to make sure you feel safe, your kids feel safe. You're just going to go and you're going to say the thing. We teach you how to practice it so that it comes out naturally. But what we're doing is we're building fluency. Fluency is the ability to easily and accurately use a language. So if I have to go in my head and conjugate a verb and find a vocabulary word, that's not easily and accurately. Now I am translating, right? I'm trying to figure that out. Rather, fluency is just when it really easily comes out. So we teach you full sentences that you use in your everyday life. So you mentioned, I don't have a lot of time as a mom. That is why TalkBox.mom works so well, because as parents, I mean, how often have you said in your life, Heather, put on your shoes,
Yeah.
right? So we're like, okay, well, let's just say that in the language. Let's learn how to say put on your shoes in language. So you can say a bunch of times. Your kids can also say it to you, which they love. They love telling you what to do all of a sudden in another language. It's very fun for them.
Yeah.
And so you start saying that, you start using that. Well, with put on your shoes, you've learned to accurately, you have an ear for how commands are given. You know the plural for shoes. You're able to use it in a sentence. And then when you're like, oh, I want to say put on a jacket, right? Boom, you can also say that as well in many languages. Japanese changes, but anyways, so there, it's very easy to start adding in these phrases to your day, and then it starts building and building and building. And we have a whole roadmap for you to with different fluency approaches, so you can just easily add it to what you're already doing instead of staying stuck for years.
Yeah. And I'm sure it's like on the go as well. So you're listening to this while you can do the dishes, while you're going for like while you're trying to do other things in your day.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
I, like, I travel around the world with my kids. And so it's very much something that we can do as we're moving. I like maybe the ultimate example is so we went to Italy with my sister-in-law. My sister-in-law, she has cancer and she has three young kids. Her family is from Italy, so she has always wanted to go. And I'm like, we have to go now. Like we got to do this.
Yeah.
So her
One
kids,
life.
yeah, you understand this.
Yes.
So she has twins that are 4 and a 2-year, almost 2-year old. And then I have my boys 13, 10, and 5. So it's 6 kids. It's a lot of kids for Europe. That's a ton of kids.
Mm-hmm.
So she at first she wanted to, like, when we would practice phrases, she wanted to explain like what the verb was and what the noun was. And I was like, no, we just nope, we're gonna just say it, and she wants to play in the app and do the thing and have the lights go off, get the dopamine hit. And I'm like, that will not help us when we are in Italy. So we get to Italy and my kids, we get to the gelato and we have practiced ordering gelato, right? How motivating for kids. So we order our ice cream in Italian. It works so well. We get exactly what we want, which is like so confirming for my kids. Like we're using Italian, and Italian's very new for us. We speak other languages in our home. And then she's all of a sudden is like, wait, can you just tell me how to say that? I want to do that too. So she's saying it, she's using it. We are going to cross the street, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have the phrase, we need to cross the street. We can say that a million times when we're here. So we play that phrase. At first, like, it was very difficult for my brother. And I'm like, don't worry. You can just, say it slow with the audio because it goes slow and then fast. So he's saying it. And then we start using it before we're going across streets. And we're with all these kids. And we're able to do it with 6 children before crossing a street, right? So quick with the app. Play it, say it. And then we're able to keep using the phrase. And by the end, my brother, who was just like, oh, so fast, he's saying it. And he's like, I love Italian. I'm going to keep using Italian. And he's like, that's silly that people learn verbs and vocabulary words. You can just talk. This is the best. So I like really pulled them over.
I love that. Well, you just kind of like threw them in the deep end. You're like, okay, you can learn the way you want in your comfort zone. And then when you're in it and you're like, well, now is the time to use it. You're not going to be pulling out your verbs and nouns and all of that. It's like, open your mouth, Open your mouth.
Yeah.
So that reminds me of like what I talk about inside of our community. I talk a lot about like resistance and mastering resistance because we do the thing, like we literally do everything else to
Yes.
avoid doing the thing that's going to make the transformation. I'm like, you say you don't have time, but you've just wasted hours and hours and hours avoiding doing the thing that you actually want to do, which is learn a new language.
It's so true the amount of resistance we see. And I think that's what we're so good at TalkBox.mom because I don't have any I like to confront resistance, and do what's important. And I don't have time for this like stuff to come up. So we've laid it out really easy for you to think about this with languages. So the way to build fluency, the foundation of fluency is talking and listening. Yes. Then
Mhm.
on top of that is reading and writing. Because when you go to read something in another language, like say you read the word dog, you want an image of a dog to come in your mind. If you haven't said it, that image is not going to come to your mind. So now you're translating. So if you don't have a strong foundation of talking and listening, then it's going to be hard to have fluency in reading and writing. Whereas if you have a strong foundation, let's say you read a word you don't know, you can look it up in a dictionary in that language
Mhm.
and the definition will bring meaning to your mind. So these things are built on top of it, and then grammar is at the very top. Grammar is the last thing because grammar is more looking at the patterns and how a language is organized. So if we think about it like that, we're building fluency. So then now I need to spend time in talking and listening. If you're not spending time there, you're outside, you're dancing around with all your shadow activities that you're doing.
Mhm.
So then we have things called fluency layer activities. These are things you would add on to talking and listening. So that might be listening to a book in a language. Listening to a book is great, but if you're not using your phrases, you're not talking in your everyday life, then you're not going to get a lot out of listening to a book, right? That's an activity you do with this fluency layer.
Yeah.
The talking and listening layer. So it could be watching a movie, listening to music. So sometimes we'll find people who are just spending time listening to music, watching a movie, reading a book, right? They're like, I'm not talking because they're not doing the core thing. The other things are helpful, but only if you're doing the core, the actual thing, talking in the language.
There's two things I want to bring up because they're two things that are really, really important to me. Is one is connection, like relational connection, like as a family. And I can see the like, you know, it feels like a scavenger hunt, but you're like doing this together as a family, creating connection. And so many people are, I'm sure you hear this all the time, but like the screens, right? Kids, Wi-Fi, screens, all the things. You're doing something together. It helps you learn a new skill and it creates human connection. And the second part is social anxiety, like getting them out there in the world and like actually having to order their own gelato or ask for something. And it's like you're teaching them these life skills as well. It's not just a new language.
Oh, absolutely. I feel like there's so much that you can learn through doing a language, even creating a positive learning environment in your home. Like a lot of people, they will say, I didn't realize the family strengthening, family connecting benefits that would come from this. It's because we help you remove these small toxic behaviors that creep in when you teach and you learn because of maybe how you went through the educational system. So we
Mhm.
have that going on as well. And then absolutely for the life skills. I mean, when your kids see like that, you're like, I am scared to teach a language. I'm going to be bad at it when I start. They are then like, wow, my mom did something that she wasn't very good at, and I watched her work on it and improve. And you look back at the language and you're like, look what we did together. So
Mhm.
then when my kids have another opportunity in life and they're like, I'm not very good at it, they're like, okay, that means I'm just going to practice. And you know what? Practicing is fun. Those are the memories I have of starting something is actually fun and silly. And I see that with my 10-year-old. He wanted to bake and he got this baking book and it had like breaded or braided bread he wanted to make. That was like the first thing he wanted to do. And my husband's like, maybe you should start with something. I'm like, he's not starting with something. Like he wants to do that. And so I'm like, what do you think will happen? He's like, I might make it wrong and then I'll just like do it again and try another way and figure it out. And I was like, that's what I want my kid to know in life. Like
Yeah.
go at it, do your iterations, figure it out till it works instead of like it has to be perfect. And so I think that's like another life skill that he also has.
I love that. So I want to talk about travel because
Yes.
this is something cool. And it's kind of well, we're recording this right before summer, and that's usually when people are out and about. Kids aren't in school and they're traveling the world. Not everybody, but we're out and about more often, doing our thing. How did you get to the point where you created this product? Like, why did you create it? And like, tell us a little bit about your backstory. And then I want to talk about free travel. How do we travel the world for free? That's why you're really here, Adelaide. You're a little wizard because people are like, how do you do that? You know, we see the laptop lifestyle online and we're like, this isn't reality. Like, there's ways you got to systematize your life, have a plan, execute the plan if you're an outside of the box thinker. So, how did you get to why did you create this product? And then let's talk about travel.
Yes, I'm very excited to talk about travel and traveling for free and how we spend like 5 to 6 months out of the year outside the country just
I love
having
this.
fun, mostly for free. Okay, so I had learned, well, I had tried to learn several languages the traditional way, and I always felt anxious talking. But I was living in Germany. I was working in the fashion industry doing marketing. I had like a linguistic background too. You know how like you study and then life ends up how it is. So I had my first son in Germany, and I brought him home from the hospital. And I had C1 level German. What if you're familiar with like the language things? C1 and C2 are the highest levels that a non-native speaker can get. So I'm like at the top of the thing. So I bring my son home from the hospital. I put him on the changing table, and I'm like, I'm just gonna talk to him in German. Like he's gonna learn English. There's no way he's not gonna learn English. So I'm just gonna go hard on the German. And then I'm like, well, how do you say
I'm
poop
just
went up your
gonna
back?
go hard on the German. I'm all in German.
It's German because you're like I have to do. I mean, the thought back then is like, if I don't do it 100%, it's not going to get done at all for language. Like that's what people will
This was
say.
your
That's
first child, obviously.
obviously,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
There, if you met Adelaide with first child, then you would just be like, can I even have a conversation with this woman? Like, I'm like thinking like there's a right way to do stuff. Like,
Yeah.
it's a science. So,
Yeah.
woo. Okay, so I can't say poop went up your back. I don't know how to say where are the wipes. There's just some basic things I can't say, and I'm like, wow, I'm this terrible failure. I can't even speak to my baby. So I live in Germany. I'm asking people how to say things. I'm driving them nuts. It's just not working. We come home, and I'm like, well, that didn't work, and I felt like kind of what we talked about with Italy. I did all this preparation, doing it the traditional way. And when the time came to use it outside of work, outside of the things, I couldn't use it. I wasn't prepared. And what's
Mhm.
wild is when you learn a language at home, I mean, it's the same with English, you're prepared to speak in many different areas. You're just adding in new words. So I didn't have this foundation, and I could feel that I didn't have the foundation. And so then later, a couple years later, my husband and I, we had this opportunity to put everything in storage and travel around the world with our kids while we work remotely. And this is before people are really working remotely. This is
Before it was cool to work
before
remote.
it was cool. I want to say it was 2014, 2013, 2014. It was around then. So we did it. We went to Brazil, and it was the same thing. I have this 3-year old, and we have this beautiful view of the beach, and I'm like, hey, we're not going to the beach until you conjugate a verb. And he's like mixed or sassy. You're already laughing, right? So you know who I was. Okay. So he goes, I can't even breathe.
Oh my gosh. How we
So,
traumatize child number one. We're
but
not going to the beach until you conjugate a verb.
okay, but my child is like a little, he's a boy, but he's like a little sassy mini Heather. So he looks at me and
You
he
would
goes,
have to be in order to be your child for crying out like that's a coping strategy.
so he
So he
goes,
looked at you and said, what?
he said, Mom, we didn't come to Brazil to sit in a room.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh my gosh, you're able to say all that and you've never conjugated a verb. Like, what am I doing? I'm a crazy person. So it just, oh my gosh. And then I was like, I taught you to talk. How did I teach you to talk? What did I do? I was obviously good at it. What am I doing? And it was just this big moment where I'm like, these certificates, these things that are like, you speak a language, they don't mean anything,
Yeah.
right? It just was this undoing of my identity and everything. And I was like, well, I taught him to talk. So I did use my experience and figure out like different fluency approaches, different things we would do so that it was just streamlined for having kids because like we're not here to sit in a room. We're here to move around. We're here to do stuff, get things done. So it had to match the demands as a parent and also give the results that we want. And so that was like really big what I did. So we went to different countries, we were doing that. And then all of a sudden people of course are like, how are you speaking so many languages with your kids? And I'm like, oh, it's so easy because it was so hard. But then they're offended. They're like, what do you mean it's so easy? So I got a test group together and I took them through what I do. And the next day they're like, Adelaide, my child remembered what we learned in Spanish yesterday, what we said. They're using the phrase. That is more than I could do in high school. And I took 2 years of Spanish. I couldn't put that together. And so I was like, oh, okay, this is really going. So then I went down to Mexico, developed everything, put it together. And like, I mean, it's been 7 years now. So we've gone through different iterations, but now it's just really streamlined for families to do those two things, right? Integrate with your daily life. Well, and I would add connect with your kids, but then also give you the results that you're actually talking and using the language. So I did it out of necessity that like I wanted to do this. I have always failed. Why am I failing? And just figuring that out. It's probably like the part of like the philosophy degree in me, just like pulling things apart.
Mm-hmm.
And then wanting to serve others because I could just see that so many families wanted to do this, but they've been just sold this delusion that if you do everything but talking, you will talk.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's how our kids learn English or their first language. We just talk to them and they pick it up. And why is that such a mind-blowing concept? Like we
Because
talk to the
people
kids.
undermine what moms do, maybe. I don't
Isn't
know.
that weird?
Yeah.
Like I've thought about it previously, but I did not sit there and try to conjugate a verb in English with my children before I got them to speak to me. I just spoke and they eventually picked up.
Yeah.
Okay, this is amazing. And we're going to be talking about how people can get this, but we're going to talk about travel. You are such
Yeah.
a wealth of knowledge and information. And I ask so many people, I use this journal prompt, wouldn't it be nice if? I'm like, I don't care what your dreams and desires are. I just want to know what is inside of your soul right now that wants to be birthed. Like, and most of the time, travel in some capacity is on there. Like, they want to travel, they want to be free, they want to experience. And I was having a conversation with you about travel points. I see all these little people on Instagram, and I'm like, this feels so complicated and overwhelming. And yet, when I talk to you, I think one of your superpowers is taking complex things like learning a new language and being like, this is so easy. So everyone is going to want to listen to this. They're probably going to want to listen to this episode again and take notes and pause the recording and do all the things. And I'm going to ask clarifying questions. So, Adelaide, how do we travel with our families for free or close to free?
Close to free. Yeah, we'll say close to free. I think when people are like free, it's a little scammy. So close to free. I love
Okay.
that. Okay, so yes, it is my superpower. So let's go. So the first thing that we want to do, so I'll explain it with my trip so you can kind of frame it. Our last trip we did. We went to Spain, we went to Italy, we went to Germany. In Spain, our hotel was free. It was our points. Our flights were free but fees, right?
Okay.
Same thing going to each country with the flights and going home. Also, Spain was also all on hotel points. The trip was supposed to be just Italy with my sister-in-law, but we found that it was actually cheaper to fly to Spain before and fly out of Germany and make it a month-long trip instead of an 8-day trip or 10-day
Mhm.
trip, whatever it was in Italy, right? So to do that or to do any trip you're thinking of, you first need to, the easiest way to do this is to think of where do you want to go,
Okay.
right? What's your vision for your trip? What do you want to connect with? What do you want to see? What do you want to do, right? So where do you want to go? So Then from there, you have to think, do you have miles and points already? You might already have a bunch of points. We've met people who've been sitting on points and didn't know it. So you're going to want to look for, we'll start with flights, transportation, getting that budget down. I think of it actually, let's go back a little bit. I think of it in a budget kind of way. Like, how can I only have, like, I have so much money to spend. If I want to lower my transportation budget, so I'm not spending $2,000 on tickets, I'm spending $200, something like that. What am I going to play with? Because then I can travel longer. So I really like to, like, when I travel, live on the budget I already have so I can travel like endlessly, and then figure out with miles and points how to pull down the expenses that are shooting the budget past, pushing us out of budget. All right, because I just love to play with that. Okay, so what miles and points do you already have? For flights, for getting that transportation budget down, you want to look at airlines, American Airlines, Southwest, United, whoever you fly with. See if you have miles with them. It could be low, it could be disappointing. That's okay. You can put it in a spreadsheet, write it down, however you like to do it. But then you want to look at your American Express and Ultimate Chase Reward points. So you probably have those cards. So you look at those cards. Those cards can transfer to different airlines, right? So those are good to look at. So do you have points? Now you want to say, I want to go to Spain, or I want to go to Japan, wherever you want to go. You go to the website pointsyeah, YEAH.com.
Points,
Pointsyeah.com.
YEAH.com.
Yeah, kind of like when you're typing on LOL or AIM Instant Messenger. I don't want to say LOL, AOL Instant Messenger.
AOL, yeah.
You're like, yeah, YEAH. That
Okay.
kind of spelling.
Awesome.
Now you see some of my teenage head there. Okay, so on there you can put in different destinations, and it will tell you which airlines fly there and what points those airlines take.
Okay.
Then, well, if you're like, I don't really know where I want to go, they also have a daydreaming part of their website, so you can just see like what's the maybe cheapest points to go on or something. You can kind of get your brain going. So you're like, okay, I need to fly to a specific place. I need so many Ultimate Chase points or whatever it is. Then there's two websites I go to. One is frequentmiler.com and the other is doctorofcredit.com. On those sites, what I'm doing is I'm looking for those specific cards. So when I looked at the destination, the airline told me what kind of points. From those kind of points, I need to see what card do I need to get. So I go to those websites, and then I'm looking for cards that have a sign-up bonus. The bonus is going to be at least 50,000 points. I get the most amount of points not flying, but with sign-up bonuses.
Okay.
Okay. So I choose which card do I want to get those sign up bonuses, or cards. It could be plural. If there's a big trip we're going on, we might be signing up for cards for like a year or half a year. It just depends. But you want to do this responsibly, because you're not going to rack up debt. That would not be saving money at all. That's not free, right? So we'll talk about that. So after you choose what kind of card you want to get, the fastest way to get it is, yeah, like I said, one, sign up for the card. And then two, you need to meet the minimum spend. So some cards will say you need to spend $2,000 a month. So what we do is we look at our budget, what we're already spending. What can we put on a card? It has been amazing to find out what you can actually put on a card. And I'm like, I don't know if you should be able to put this on a card. So you can put like electricity, maybe it's your food. There's other things. Let's say you're going to redo your roof, like something happened. I know people who like their roof got destroyed and they're going to redo it anyways, and the insurance was going to give them money, but they put it on their card to meet the minimum spend, or they broke it up over several cards to meet the minimum
Yeah.
spend.
So if you're able to pay something, they're willing to take credit card, you're getting the points.
Yes. So you meet the minimum spend. So it's like $2,000, maybe $2,000 per month for 3 months. It's usually 3 months that you have to meet the minimum spend. You are going to pay off the card because it was already in your budget. You had already budgeted for it. So you pay off the card, you don't carry any balance.
The right way to use credit cards.
Just because sometimes people are like, you have a bunch of cards. I'm like, I have a bunch of cards I don't use. So I have like
it's not free cash.
No, it's not free cash.
No.
Don't think like that. So we have like boxes of credit cards that are just not being used. And what we do is we have calendar alerts. That's like when the annual fee is coming up, I'll call in and I'll be like, hey, I see the annual fee is coming. And I mean, there's some annual fees you want to keep. You're like, I love this annual fee. It gives me enough benefits and whatever that I want to keep it. Some of them, like, no, I don't want this at all. So I
Mhm.
call and I'll say, hey, I noticed that I have an annual fee coming up. And I say, I would like to downgrade to a no fee card. At that point, there's three things that can happen. One, they say, oh, we'll just waive that fee for you. Boom, waived. And then they think I won't call again, but I'll call the next year. Then the second thing that might happen is they say, okay, we'll downgrade you to a no fee card. That keeps your credit open because you don't want like credit to be closing, right? So we're trying to keep the credit open to show the banks like we're responsible with credit.
Yep.
Then the third thing that can happen is they say there's not a no fee card. That's it. And so at that point, they would close the credit. Sometimes I can move that credit over, but something's going to close. Even sometimes, Heather, it's because we have so many cards, I'll apply for a card and I'll get denied. And so I'll call them and I'll say, why did I get denied? And they're like, you already have so much credit open with our institution. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, do you see that card over there? It has $10,000 of unused credit. Can you put like 5,000 on this new card? And they're like, absolutely. So they move it over. I don't know how that's benefiting them at all, right? And then
Mhm.
I get the points. And I don't feel bad about this because I've paid hundreds of $1,000s in the credit card processing fees whenever somebody buys from me. So I'm
Yeah,
gonna make
you
some money from
you
this.
said that comment and the way you said, I was like, what do you mean? And so it's just a game. But yes, we're giving so much to these credit card companies, and they do have points for a reason, right? And so if you're
Yes.
utilizing it properly, they know nobody's going to play the game, or the low percentage of people who are going to play the credit card or the points game, because it's just awareness, it's education and implementation. And very few people will create a plan and execute the plan. It's like all these other people are like, I'll give you all this information for free, but we know very few of you are going to follow through with it because humans are interesting like that.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
why I think it's helpful to start with the destination because I'm like, you want to go there. So just do the work. Like, you're either going to work at work to make the money or you can do less work and just be organized, right? It's not like a part-time job to get points. Maybe it's a hobby like that level.
Yeah.
But
Change
yeah. Oh,
doom scrolling on Instagram for learning how to collect points and
yes.
travel the world.
Okay, so then something that you said, like also, sometimes they don't expect you to use your points very well because a lot of people will take their points and they'll cash them out for money, and that's not the best exchange of your points. So
Mhm.
let's talk about hotels so you can see the best exchange for points when it comes to hotels. So if I can lower my transportation budget, then I can also lower my hotel budget. And often with hotels, breakfast is included. So now I've also lowered my budget that goes towards food.
I'm laughing
For
because you're going to say it, but we'll get there.
what is it?
When we were talking about breakfast and the kids, and they're like, I'm not hungry. You're like, we have a free breakfast. You're going to eat the breakfast.
This is my husband. He's like, they need to be eating their breakfast, you know? I'm like, well,
Inflation is a
perhaps
real thing. Eat your breakfast. It's included
it's included. I'm like, perhaps they don't understand. We should explain to them
in the
why
language of
what
the country that we're in because we know how to speak it.
Okay, so for the points, again, you're going to want to look at the American Express, Chase Ultimate Rewards, and then you will look at the hotel lines like Hyatt, Marriott, Hilton. So you look at those. Would you already have points there? Now, the best hotel right now to transfer your American Express, no, to transfer your Chase Ultimate Reward points to is Hyatt. They will give you the absolute most, if you're converting it, it's kind of, well, you'll get the most out of it. Okay, let's just say it like
Most
that.
bang for your buck.
Buck, that's, yeah,
Yeah.
you'll get that 100%. So we will transfer to Hyatt, and Hyatt has such an amazing program. They don't pay me, but just to be a globalist with them because we do this so much, the breakfasts are amazing. They're like these huge buffets, at these nicer Hyatts. They're all
Mhm.
over the world. They're so nice. So in Europe, we got in Spain and in Germany for each one. My husband and I, we had a suite with a living room, and then we had a connecting room with our kids in it. It was lovely, right? And it was all on points.
Mhm.
So to get the points for the things, for sorry, to get the points for your housing, to bring the housing budget done. It's very simple. It's like the airplane ones. Um, so you just do the same thing. And then to figure out, like, well, what hotel can I stay at where I'm going? First look, is there a Hyatt there, right? On the Hyatt website, see what kind of Hyatts are there, because that you'll get, like you said, the most bang for your buck. And then if not, look for the other ones. Now, it could happen that there isn't a hotel where you're going. And so you have to say, like, book on Airbnb. So don't just book on Airbnb, because you can actually can get points booking
Pro
on.
tip, pro
Yes.
tip.
We're just going to up level it. So the British, and I hopefully I'm saying this right, they're Avios points. You can get 2 of those for every dollar spent at Airbnb if you book through the British Airways portal. So you have to go to their portal, and you just click in there, and you put your British Airways frequent flyer account number, and you go to Airbnb and you book normally. So it's very easy to do. Just do that step and you'll get double points for everything you book. So let's say you book Airbnb and it's like $1,000 or a couple $1,000, you
Mm-hmm.
might end up with enough points for a free flight for doing nothing, just booking through the portal. So like, just take the time to be a little strategic.
Mm-hmm. So this is like, as you're telling me this, it's coming in like a new language.
Mm.
And I'm like, I can hear you. And I'm going to have to hear this over and over and over again. So this is what happens, right? Like the brain is like, oh, this is exciting. I want the outcome. So this is kind of like correlating with learning a new language. I want the outcome. I want to travel. I want, like, everyone wants the thing. They just don't want to figure out who they need to become in order to do that. So I'm the type of person that I will listen to this over and over and over again. Like step one, I'll just brainwash myself until it starts to click and make sense. And
Mhm.
then I will go to the websites and I'll create a little SOP for myself and I'll do the thing. And it's like these things, I always say these things aren't hard, they're just emotionally uncomfortable, right? It's not hard to learn a new language. It's emotionally uncomfortable. It's just
Mhm.
exposure. And so much of our lives, we're just doing the same thing over and over and over again. And we're like, I'm stuck. And it's like, well, are you stuck or are you just doing the same thing over and over and over again? So if I always say, if it's on your list, like, wouldn't it be nice if, and it's on your desire list, that desire was put there for you. So if traveling the world with your family is on your wouldn't it be nice list, or learning a new language, and the thought of acting on it is emotionally uncomfortable, you don't need to like plan a trip tomorrow or learn a new language tomorrow, but you can lean in to that. How do you react when you're learning a new skill? I'm curious.
Me?
Yeah, like something that has nothing to do with your area of genius, maybe it has nothing to do with your business or things that come easy to you. Like how does your brain and how do you respond or react?
Okay, it's interesting. If I'm learning a new skill with my kids, I have trained myself so much with TalkBox.mom that I'm just like, oh, okay, we're not gonna, like, my kids are already like, they know we're not gonna be great when we start, but we're gonna have fun, right? We're so good at that. But then recently, I did this challenge on Instagram where I was posting 3 reels a day, and I wanted to win the prize. Okay, I just wanted to do it, and I don't often post on Instagram. So I did it. I did finish. I did all of the reels, but in that process of, and I'm not good at reels, like I haven't done them, right? So obviously it's a new thing. Like, it's a skill that
Mhm.
I'm learning to make. Oh my gosh, all of these perfectionist attitudes that I had that I thought I overcame were like just bursting through the door and just punching me in the face and knocking me down. Like, it was so violent, these old habits that I thought, no, 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 I'm a high achiever now. Like, I don't have these things. So it was interesting for my kids to watch, because there was like one reel and I was like, I have to dance, but I was like, it's an easy reel to hit my 3 reels a day. Like, I should just do it. And I was so embarrassed. And my 10-year-old goes, Mom, you could just record it and then you could see if you like it at that point, but you could just do it and then find out. But he had to tell me that because I trained him that way, like, for learning. But it
Yes.
was so cute. Like, why don't you just start and do it and then see? But it was like so
Like
much of
take
the
the
reaction, like,
next right step. Yeah.
yes. So that was like such an experience to go through. So it was just interesting that it was on my own,
Mhm.
and I was like going back into to different habits. So I don't know if that answered your question fully, but it was just like these different experiences
Well,
with
I
kids,
like
without kids.
100% because then we're motivated because we're trying to role model for them. And we see they're like, okay, well, what's it like for me learning a new skill? And then they're literally giving it back to you. I would say it was about 6 months ago. I was determined to learn how to, no, maybe about a year. I don't know. Do sourdough. I don't know why. I was like, okay, I'm not definitely like a cook by any means. My children are like, did you make this or dad? And if dad made it, then they'll eat it. But if I made it, they're like, I don't know. So for whatever, I got a, what do you call it? I was going to call it a SCOBY. That's kombucha, a starter.
A starter.
Someone gave me a starter. Okay. So I didn't have to start my own starter. And I'm like, I am determined. And so I took a weekend. I was watching YouTube videos. There's somebody that I know who does it. I'm like, give me your resources. And I'm listening and I'm watching and I'm almost crying because I'm like, I'm so frustrated. And I'm like, it's fucking bread. Like,
Yes.
Heather, you have done harder things than this. It is fucking bread. And then I got angry. And usually when I get angry, I'm like, this is not about the bread for me. This is a representation of like, I can learn a new skill. So then by the end of the weekend, made some little buns. They turned out like shit. They were rock hard. And I was like, just keep going, keep going, keep going.
Yes.
Now I can do it with my eyes closed. And I'm like, kids, what do you want? I make bagels. I make English muffins like all the time. And it's so funny because people are like, I don't have time for that. I'm like, it takes me no time. I do it in between everything
Mm-hmm.
else. It's like 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, and there's steps to it. And so it's intuitive for me now, and it's part of my routine and my flow. But the stories people say, I could never do that. I don't have time for that. And I think it's the stories that we tell ourselves that hold us back from becoming or doing the things that we want to do, like traveling the world with our families for way less than out of pocket costs or learning a new language. And these are the things that hold us back in life. And I just love when I meet people who think outside the box, live outside the box, because when you get to like understand your brain, for me, when I'm like leaning into something, I can feel the resistance. I'm like, oh, something
Mm-hmm.
magic is coming. And
Mm-hmm.
I have had to teach myself, whether it's in business or my health or anything, I'm like, I don't want to do this. Oh, it's too hard for me. Or I start outsourcing my confidence or outsourcing my
Yes.
resistance. Like, I'm going to, someone else is going to solve my problem for me. And I'm just going to kind of avoid it a little bit. I'm like, ooh, no, I'm like, run towards it. So I get angry and I'm like, fuck sakes, I'm taking 6 months to master this thing. I'm determined for this to feel easy.
Yes. Okay. I talked to this to my 13-year-old a lot ever since he was little because he has the most resistance when it comes to writing. And so I'm like, wow, maybe you're going to grow up to be this author or something. Like it must be so important that you
Mm.
always feel this level of resistance because you got to call it what it
Ooh,
is.
I
And
love
he's
that.
like, oh, it's that again. Right. And so we'll definitely talk like about the emotional uncomfortableness like you're saying when you start something because we want to go from I'm starting to I'm great in a second, maybe less than a second, please, right? But it's
Mm.
really like, can we just be emotional and comfortable as we start until it becomes part of our routine and it doesn't feel like anything? Can we just go through that and do it in like perhaps a really fun way? And so when it comes to language and you're like, no, I feel so uncomfortable, we do have a free starter pack you can do so you can just try it out and feel it. You go to talkbox.mom/free to try that out and just see like the beginning phases of it and like, wait, that actually feels good to start something. It doesn't feel scary or hard, right? It's like, oh, like you can just see what you're learning. I think it'd be a fun experiment for anybody, even if they don't want to learn a language here, taking the things they've learned with you and then
Mhm.
seeing how their brain reacts in this as they start it.
Yeah, I love that. And I think I know for myself when I'm in this weird routine and I'm like, especially addicted to my phone, and we know our kids are headed in that direction. And I'm like, how can I break this up? And so if I still have to utilize the technology, make it useful, right? Rather than just doom scrolling or numbing out or whatever it is. So, okay. So you kind of already gave it away. So talkbox.com /free.
Wait, TalkBox.mom. I'm
Oh
glad
my
you said it
gosh.
like
I
that.
thought I said mom.
A
Yeah,
lot of
you're
people do that. It's dot mom because it's your mother tongue. We're copying. Yeah.
talkbox.mom, MOM. Talk about habits, just habitual habits.
Oh man, no, we came since we're 7 years old, and like every URL I felt like at the time was bought. So talkbox.com is gonna forward to like TOKbox. Like it's not
Mm,
even the same thing. So
dot
don't do
mom,
that.
dot mom, dot
They must have so much
mom.
bounce traffic, those poor people, and they're like, why is that happening to us?
Yeah.
Why does everybody bounce?
Yeah. So just go there to your website, forward slash
Yeah,
free,
like
check it out.
check it out. And if you're like, I want to get started, like I really want to use a language with my family, you're like Heather level, like let's go in and do this, right? But more role modelly for, for your kids.
Ooh, aggressiveness.
Let's go.
I just sent my kid to Costa Rica and I was like, speaks French. And I'm like, well, hopefully you figure it out. And he came back and he's like, that was hard. That was really hard. I have no Spanish. And I said, yeah, but like nonverbal communication is so beautiful. I love when you're like, to connect with other humans. No, no Spanish training whatsoever. And then now, as we're having this conversation, it's like, well, maybe that would have been a little supportive. So now that's
Okay,
me,
so
though. I'm like, throw your kid in the deep end, throw yourself in the deep end, figure it out as you go. Um, yeah, now I'll be like, okay, let's get you a Spanish box. And then let's try this
yeah.
again.
Yeah, so you go to the website, you can choose one of 11 languages so far, and everybody wants more languages from us, so there'll be more, don't worry. But there's 11 right now. You choose. So you select your language, and then you can see how the boxes are. There's 9 different boxes in the series. So it's a subscription series that you move through. You decide though how many boxes you want to do. Like I said, the full is 9. Each box goes into a specific area of your life and has different fluency approaches. So, like the first box is to help you be consistent because that's so important with learning language, is around snacks and kitchen. How often do your kids whine that they're hungry, right? Or ask for snacks? Or how often do you think of, so that's there. The second box, fluency approach, is to get you out of your head. You have to say everything in that box as you're moving. So you can't be in your head trying to translate. So each one has a different approach, different thing that it covers. And so you can choose to get one box at a time or go all in and get all 9. From there, you choose how often you want your boxes to come. If you're like, I'm going to practice twice a day, and practice is like 2 minutes, 5 minutes, right? You might practice 2 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes in the afternoon, or at bedtime, right? Because the main part of it is using it in your life. So the practice isn't like the isn't very long because our focus is using it, and it integrates with your life. So you might say, I'm going to do that twice a day. Then you want to get your boxes every month. But if you're like, I'm going to do that twice a week, right? That's fine too. You'll get your boxes every 3 months. And if you're in between, miss a day here and there, every 2 months is a really great option. Most families choose every 2 months. You can always change it as you figure out, your learning style. In the cart, it will ask if you want to add on the phrase book. I definitely recommend it. It has phrases that you'll use throughout your day, like go to the car, get in your seat, buckle your seatbelt, stop hitting, stop spitting. Things that you really use in your home, things that your kids will say to you as well. So just lots of phrases to use. So when the boxes are in a specific area, the book is like shallow, like more shallow and spread thinner across many things. So you just have that nice balance. Everything comes with the companion app. So whatever you own in the program is in the app, and it has the native speaker audio. The native speaker audio is great even if you yourself are a native speaker. We have so many families who are like, say, well, any language, but like say take a Spanish speaker. They speak Spanish, but they don't speak Spanish with their kids. Our program isn't about you learning the language, it's about you using the language. So if you're not using the language, you want to use it. The native speaker audio, she'll say the phrase one word at a time, then say the full phrase. And if you are a native speaker, your kids will see that they're not performing for you, they're practicing with you. And that shift will have them talking and using the language more and more. So it has that as well. So you can go to talkbox.mom, choose your language, check it out, and get started. And we would love to hear you talking in a language because that just makes us so happy because it changes your life.
I love that. I like you're like, hear you, not see you, hear
Not see
you.
you, hear you.
Yes. Um, something that you were saying too, I was thinking about like gifting. Do you have a lot of people that gift, or even I'm just all about connection. So I'm like, oh, I could see myself do it, maybe not me right today, but maybe you're a grandparent and you want to spend
Yes.
some quality time with your grandchildren and teach them a new language. I'm like, anything anyone can do in my life to make my life easier, I'm all for it. But I love this too. So is that something that happens in your world?
Absolutely. And like think about it. Mother's Day is coming up. So maybe you do want to ask your mom for a gift to talk in a language, or you're the grandma and you just really want to do that or what have you. On the checkout page, you just have to check this is a gift. You'll need their email address and then their shipping address to ship it to them. So you can put your billing and their shipping in and definitely gift it over. So you as the giftee can see the payment information, and or the gifter, you can see the payment information. The giftee cannot see that. So it's
Nice.
easy to gift.
I love that. I know we're planning a big family trip, and
Yes.
I'm going to become obsessed because I run towards resistance with this points as my hobby now that I know sourdough bread and I want to add on points to another
Let's
little
go.
skill. And then I'm going to make everyone learn a new language, speak a learn a new language.
Talk in a new language. Let me think of that. Like TalkBox.mom, talk in a new language.
Yeah,
So we're
talk
silly
a new
about that.
language. Adelaide, thank you so much. You are such a good time. And I'm so grateful we connected. And thanks for sharing today.
Thank you. This was very fun. Thank you so much.